Good morning and welcome to another Angle of Pursuit podcast, your weekly Sunday morning live stream. I am your host, Kyle Robert. You follow me on Twitter at NotoriousKRO. With me, as always, is Brian Twining. What's up, Brian? We got a lot to get into this morning.
We got a lot of scary situations and fantasy owners everywhere with sweaty palms and nervous thoughts overnight. This has been a whirlwind of the last couple days here for us football fans.
Yeah, so the COVID kind of, we had gone through 3 weeks with seemingly no issues, no problems. Everything seemed like it was going to be fine, smooth sailing. And then, of course, week 4 is when the world, everything just catches up with us. So Vikings, Titans, we're dealing with issues. Vikings ended up testing negative throughout a bunch of days. They were fine. They're good to go for their game against Houston. The Titans obviously got rescheduled. They're looking into what happened there because throughout the week, it just kept getting the cases just kept piling up. So they're trying to find out what their protocols are, and they're not following the rules in Tennessee, which, we'll see how that pans out. And then the shocker drops that, the Chiefs game might get canceled because Cam Newton's got it. And I like how ESPN's like, it's Cam Newton and the practice squad backup for the Chiefs. And it's like, no, his name's Jordan Ta'amu. He's a decent quarterback. If people knew him in college. Either way, so that game got moved. I figured we would be talking about, how risky do we want to get? Do we actually want to play these guys? It's happening Monday, at least as of now, as long as nothing crazy pops up, which is great because I was telling you before the show, I had a league where I have Hill, Kelsey, and Mahomes, and I was looking at starting Nick Mullins, Logan Thomas, and Curtis Samuel. So that is something that I feel like you have to deal with. And obviously this week is great because even with it's unfortunate the Titans and Steelers are going on bye, but we don't have a bye. Wait till we have that bye week with 6 or 8 teams, and then we get 2 or 4 thrown on top of that.
Yeah, this season is definitely going to be the most challenging from a roster management standpoint, and I think you've seen so many different ways that people are dealing with the whole COVID thing. I'm a commissioner of a league, and I had seen, I think it was Ryan McDowell on Twitter had posted a different scenario of a way of dealing with it by actually allowing his people in his league to select alternatives for the players of games that may potentially get canceled. So I kind of took that route. You had said prior to us recording here that people in one of your leagues actually voted not to do that.
Yeah, so I would say this is going to be something that we'll probably have to deal with eventually, potentially multiple times. So I would at least get your league to set a baseline for how you want to approach all these things. And it's really easy, I think, for people to kind of not really want to go, oh, no, you can't set up a backup plan when it really doesn't affect them. But then when the weeks that it affects them, those are going to be the same people complaining. So we'll see how this all works out. But I would at least reach out to your league, set a poll and say, okay, guys, guys and gals, we can either just, you set your lineup, and if the players don't play, that's a risk you're taking and you have to deal with it. Or you can email the commissioner and say, if this player or however many don't play, these are my backup plans. These are the guys that you'll swap in. So it's not like, this guy went off and I would never played him, but I'm going to get his fantasy points, because that's not what we're trying to get. We're just trying to make sure people don't get screwed playing somebody that, the NFL, it's not like they're injured or potentially game. Right now I'm monitoring Devontae Adams. There's a chance that he doesn't play Monday night, but in one of my leagues, he's clearly the best option and by a significant margin. So I'm going to risk it. And obviously, if you can pick up somebody from the Chiefs or you can pick up somebody from the Patriots at this point, that might be another way to go in case Adams is out. But since he's a true game time decision, I'm taking that risk. But in a scenario where the NFL cancels games at the last minute, that's not a risk you're taking. That is you are planning on playing a guy in the NFL saying, no, that whole game isn't happening. It's not something you didn't follow through on.
Yeah, it's completely different than an injury scenario. And, it's something that we've never dealt with before, and hopefully something that after this season we never deal with again. So, I mean, let's just kind of take this season for what it is and do our best and, go from there.
Yep. A bunch of inactives and actives are rolling in. Kareem Hunt is active. Big news for me. I had him, and I really didn't want to sit him. So him and Nick Chubb. Joe Mixon is active. I'm still adding Gio Bernard if you're looking for a preemptive pickup and you have some flexibility. Obviously, with all these games being canceled and stuff, it might be
more so in a PPR league though, because
100%.
I don't see Cincinnati really handing the ball off to Gio, and I know they're already like one of the top teams in the league as far as pass percentage, and I think it actually goes up. If Mixon is gone. That
being said, Mixon has been relatively ineffective. And Gio is already getting work in the passing game.
Yeah.
So even if he gets a little bit of a bump in the running game, and then that means he'll probably be the guy around the goal line too, potentially. DeAndre Hopkins is active, which is a good sign. Christian Kirk is active. Kyler Murray's got all his weapons. The one that jumped out to me and is pretty jarring, Chris Carson is active. Carlos Hyde is inactive.
Who the hell would have thought that Chris Carson?
Yeah, we talked on Tuesday or Monday, because it seemed like, for sure, Chris Carson, 2 to 4 weeks. Carlos Hyde stock up. Now Carlos Hyde's the one not playing. Chris Carson's the one starting. Chris Carson, if you own him, if he's on your team, are you using him this week? I mean, it is a nice matchup against Miami, a game where they have a chance, but
I'd be extremely scared of starting Chris Carson, just knowing that what that injury looked like when it happened, and it is a knee. Which, I mean, if anyone who's listening or watching has had a knee injury before, any kind of knee injury, like those are so easily re-aggravated. And this guy's playing football with dudes trying to take him out at his lower body, so there's a high risk of re-injury there. But that being said, he's on an elite offense with an elite quarterback against a poor defense who just let James Robinson absolutely crush them on Thursday night. So, I mean, unless you have a better option, you're probably playing him.
Let me throw out some options to you, and you let me know if he starts or sits. So you're starting him or Ronald Jones versus the Chargers?
Oh, man. This is kind of difficult because we are extremely biased, but honestly, I'd probably lean Rojo, knowing that he's healthy. There's no Leonard Fournette. It's only McCoy and Vaughn back there, and the Buccaneers are a huge favorite against the Chargers. Like, we could see Rojo get his most touches ever.
Yeah. What about Jerick McKinnon or Jeff Wilson Jr. versus Philly? Would you start either of the Niners, both of the Niners, neither of the Niners?
I'd probably go Carson, just with how good the Seahawks offense is.
What about Latavius Murray at Detroit?
No, I'm still rolling Carson.
Okay, so he's basically a top 15-20 guy for you.
Yeah.
And would you start Darrell Henderson versus the Giants?
Yes.
Yeah, I would too. Mike Davis versus Arizona. I think I'd rather have Carson at that point.
Yeah, I'm not sold on the Mike Davis thing. I know it's been 2 weeks now where he's had a ton of targets, but he's not really getting the totes running, and who's to say that this amount of targets is gonna continue? It's not a stable situation.
Yeah, for sure. So it sounds like we're gonna roll him out in most leagues and see how it goes. For those of you joining us, thanks for joining. If you have questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. We will address them as they pop up. And in the meantime, Brian and I are just running through some actives, inactives, figuring out what we like for the week, all that good stuff. We got some familiar faces in the chat. Happy to have you all here. Kareem Hunt.
Go ahead.
Would you start Kareem Hunt or Ronald Jones in full PPR?
That's Rojo. Kareem Hunt is dealing with a groin injury. I know these teams, they play these up a lot. And, we don't really know how injured he actually is.
Yeah.
But from what I was reading last night, the likelihood is that Kareem Hunt's volume is kind of scaled back, and it's a little bit more Nick Chubb today. Now, Hunt's damage is done in the passing game against the Cowboys defense, who sucks against receiving running backs. But Ronald Jones and the probability of him seeing, at the bottom end of the floor, 15 touches, that to me is just too good to pass up.
Yeah. So this is kind of a cop out, but it's really like how much risk you want to assume. Because if you need points, you look for a big day. Kareem Hunt is the answer, I think. I think his ceiling is higher, but as you mentioned, coming in with a groin injury, already having Nick Chubb there, if he tweaks it the wrong way in the first quarter, he could easily sit on the bench the rest of the game and not really be a part of the offense and really frustrate you.
And also to that point, let's also remember that Cleveland, they elevated Dontrell Hillard and another guy from the practice squad to be backup running backs, knowing that Hunt is slightly injured. So
yeah. So I'd probably go Hunt with shooting for the upside, but Ronald Jones should be locked into 15 to 20 target touches today. We'll see what the Keyshawn Vaughn impact is. People are kind of excited and getting lathered up again about that guy.
It's Bruce Arians we're talking about here.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, but this is Bruce Arians we're talking about too, where he will randomly take Andre Ellington and throw him out there for 20 touches, and Ronald Jones is sitting on the bench while Keyshawn Vaughn is just going off, getting all kinds of work. The game sets up well for Rojo to have a big game. For the Bucks to win pretty comfortably, and as a touchdown favorite. So there's a lot in his favor. But man, Kareem Hunt's been so good through the first few weeks, but it's just a risk you have to take.
Yeah, the one thing that I'll say about the Kareem Hunt situation is even if he wasn't hurt, I think this is a lot closer of a discussion than what many people would think about, just because Cleveland is going to want to slow the ball down against Dallas. They do not want to get in a shootout with the Cowboys, because the Browns are not built to go up and down the field at a fast pace like Dallas. So this game could be one of those games where everyone's assuming Hunt would be the guy who would have the most production out of the backfield there. But I really think that Nick Chubb, much like last week, how everybody thought that matchup was not good, Nick Chubb is one of the best runners in the NFL, and the Browns offensive line is performing at a top 5 level right now against the banged up Dallas D line. So I can see Cleveland just, full on 55 to 60% run this game, keeping the ball out of Baker's hands, knowing that it's in Texas, and Baker Mayfield is the kind of guy that's going to want to try to show out, and he's going to make mistakes because of it. Yeah.
Let's talk about that game from a betting perspective. The line settled at 3.5. If you'd have told me the Cowboys and would be playing at home against Cleveland before the season started, and the line would only be 3.5, I was like, oh, the Browns must be really taking
right.
Stefanski must be awesome, and I know they played well, but that's a number that I still have questions about.
Yeah, it's a really difficult game though, because the Cowboys defense is horrid. I mean, they're bad.
Yeah.
And I think the line is sitting at that because everyone is assuming that the Browns offense is going to be able to just do whatever they want against them. That may not be the case, because if Dallas gets out to a lead against the Browns pass defense, who is okay, but they haven't faced a pass offense like this yet. And we've seen the Cowboys before that when they get going and they're moving quick, they're probably the most difficult team in the NFL to stop besides Seattle. So if Dallas gets out to a lead really quick, this game could be over in the first half.
Yeah. Zeke having Zeke in that game should be nice. I like the Browns passing attack in this game, as scary as it may be. I think Jarvis Landry has a nice game. I think Odell has a nice game, and by proxy, Baker has a nice game.
I'm just not sold on Baker, man. Never have, never will. It's never going to happen for me.
Yep. There was another game. Oh, What are we doing with the Houston Texans? So this is by far their easiest matchup. They have a nice opportunity. The Vikings defense has allowed 100-plus receiver in 3 straight games. Everyone's doing their Will Fuller bit. We're not exactly fans of him, but
no.
Fuller and Cooks could both be interesting options this week, especially with the Titans and Steelers on pseudo bye this week.
Man, yeah, this is one of those games where, I've been entering a ton of DFS lineups this week as I have a lot of extra play money. I have my fair share of Texans and Will Fuller and Brandon Cooks, and if this isn't the game where Deshaun Watson proves that he's a top 5 quarterback, like I just don't think that that offense is built to be like that, because Minnesota is like bottom 3 in the NFL in defensive line pressure. Houston is terrible at protecting the quarterback, but because Minnesota can't get to the quarterback, like that kind of counterbalances itself out. So Watson should have his cleanest pocket of the year.
Yep.
Will Fuller, when he's healthy, we've seen it before. Like he is a guy who could blow up, but his hamstrings are like rubber. His hamstrings are like rubber bands that have been sitting out in the sun in the desert for
but he does
days.
have his like 1 or 2 games a year where he goes for 220 yards and 2 touchdowns. Like if I'm setting DFS lineups, a Will Fuller, Brandon Cooks, Deshaun Watson with Justin Jefferson, because Bradley Roby is going to be on Adam Thielen, could be a really nice way to start your lineup.
Yeah, I actually have a roster which it's Watson, Fuller, Cooks, and I have Dalvin Cook instead of a Vikings receiver, just because I think Minnesota is going to want to kind of, they're still playing at an extremely slow pace, and I think they're the run heaviest team in the NFL right now, and I think Cook sees a little more involvement in the passing game today as well.
Yeah. And if the Texans offense gets rolling, do you feel good about David Johnson potentially having a good game here?
Yeah, I mean, Minnesota just gave up 2 touchdowns to plotting Derrick Henry. And David Johnson, even with the return of Duke Johnson, I think the fact that all 3 wide receivers for Houston are healthy, I think that's actually going to open it up a little bit more for DJ back there for the Texans, and the fact that Bill O'Brien seems like he wants to keep the ball on the ground to protect Deshaun. So
yeah, I'm going to watch a lot of this game this week, not only because of fantasy, but because of investments and because of I think it's going to be an interesting showcase. Is there any other games that you're really excited to watch today, whether it's for fantasy purposes or to see somebody see how a game shakes out, potentially how a piece fits in the offense?
So, I mean, I could talk about Seattle and Miami. That's everybody's like darling game of Ryan Fitzpatrick versus Russell Wilson, blah, blah, blah. But no, you know what, dude? I'm going with the number 1 pick in Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals hosting Jacksonville Jaguars. Like, I think that game is so intriguing because we're seeing T. Higgins finally get involved. Like, the dude has taken over as the number 2 target in that offense.
Yep.
I like AJ Green this week to kind of break out, to see them kind of try to get him and Joe Burrow's rapport built a little bit more. We saw last week they were kind of on the same page, 5 of 6 targets he was able to reel in. Joe Mixon's there. Gio Bernard's there. Jacksonville just allowed Miami to kind of control the game against them. And this Cincinnati Bengals offense is one that, even though they're not putting a ton of points on the board, if you look at Joe Burrow's numbers, dude has like 6 touchdowns and only 1 interception this year. Like he's playing at an extremely efficient rate. And if he's able to get all 3 of those big name guys on the outside around him, into the mold, this offense could become one of the best in the NFL in the first year, not something that we had anticipated.
Yeah, well, and it's nice for him too, because if there is that game where AJ Green doesn't have as good of a game, or if T. Higgins ends up a little bit banged up, he's still got plenty of other pieces. He's got Drew Sample back this week at tight end. We'll see what Joe Mixon can do. Let's talk about that Miami-Seattle game, because that's interesting. I think, especially people scrambling, looking for help at wide receiver, Preston Williams feels like a guy that could be interesting, especially if you're looking at a cheaper option in DK. are you trusting Preston Williams this week in a great matchup, or do you think he's, because it seems like he's had a couple games where he's gotten targets, he just hasn't really been producing.
Yeah, so I think a lot of people are going to be down on him this week because of he had 2 targets last week against what we thought was going to be a smash spot against Jacksonville. But
yeah,
you have to realize Seattle's going to put points on the board fast against Miami in this game. And there's no way they're going to be able to use the clock like they did against the Jaguars, seeing Ryan Fitzpatrick only throw for 180 yards. Like, this is the matchup where Ryan Fitzpatrick is a potential like top 7, top 8 play, meaning that his targets on the outside in Parker for Williams and especially Mike Gesicki are all like maybe possibly 1s or 2s at their positions. Like, Preston Williams for me is one of the best values in daily today. Like, on DK is only $4,500 as compared to Parker, I think, is like 56. So you're getting a ton of value for a guy who's going to see pretty much 90 to 95% of the snaps in a game where they're going to be trailing and having to throw a ton.
Yep. Even Myles Gaskin, like if you're looking for a cheaper option, running back could make sense. We got a question about the Saints Lions and kind of Kenny Galladay's expectations. Stepped right in his first game back, 7 targets, 6 catches, 57 yards, found the end zone. Seeing that kind of volume right off the jump is a great sign. Obviously, Matthew Stafford trusts him. This could be another interesting game where it's a lot more back and forth than maybe some people expect, especially with this game being in Detroit. How are you feeling about the Lions offense? And I guess we're get ready to see a ton of Adrian Peterson today.
No, this is a game where as long as Detroit can kind of stay in this, I think this is Matt Stafford's best opportunity yet to kind of get back to his 2019 form. I was doing some research the last few days, and he's actually like become a dink and dunker over the first couple of weeks minus Kenny Galladay. Like, he's only averaging like 6.5 yards per attempt. And I think we see that get a big boon today with Marshawn Lattimore not active for the Saints. So they're down. Oh, and Janoris Jenkins. So New Orleans is down to Pittens at corner. And with Kenny Galladay back, and hopefully he's fully healthy now, like, I think this is the game where they both can have their explosion weeks. And I think we see a little more DeAndre Swift, as New Orleans is pretty stout at stopping the running game. And they, again, how the hell is Detroit handing the ball to this old man, Adrian Peterson, who he's like, when you have DeAndre Swift, who was potentially the most athletic running back in the draft this past fall or this past spring, and they're not even getting him involved into this offense. Like, eventually they're going to have to work him in, and I think that may start today.
I hope you're right. It sure seems like there's a disconnect between the front office and the coaching staff, and the front office is going out and buying all these fancy groceries, and the cook's like, oh, no, I'm just going to make a meatloaf. And it's like, nobody wants meatloaf, dude. Meatloaf's just a glob of meat, and that's what Adrian Peterson is. And they could be like doing all these unique things and having all these different formations. And I hope you're right, as someone who's heavily invested in Stafford. Stafford or Jared Goff this week, who is at home in a matchup where the Giants are awful against the pass, and obviously we saw Nick Mullins tear them up. Do you think there's enough opportunity there, or do you think this is a spot where a Rams team that we've seen run the ball really, really well through the beginning of the season just lean heavily on Malcolm Brown, on Darrell Henderson, and don't really throw it a ton with Goff?
Man, that is a really hard one, but I actually like Goff this week because they are such big favorites. We've seen the Rams before when they're big favorites against a team with a bad defense. They don't take their foot off the pedal. Darrell Henderson is a smash spot play this week. He's going to see, 15 to 18 carries, and he's probably going to run all over them. But you also have to think, with Jared Goff over there throwing those little short routes to Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods and Josh Reynolds and Van Jefferson and Tyler Higbee and Gerald Everett, and throwing the ball to Darrell Henderson out of the backfield, there's going to be so many opportunities for big plays, and the potential of their defense giving them short fields and those short touchdown passes. I think this is a week where both Darrell Henderson and Jared Goff produce close to QB1, RB1 numbers, and Jared Goff could throw for 4 touchdowns today, just not of the long variety.
Yeah. Got a very interesting question in the chat. Todd Gurley or Jeff Wilson Jr. at flex? I know. Todd Gurley got in the end zone last week, salvaging what's been a little bit of a rough start. Atlanta is a big underdog this week, going to Green Bay, a Green Bay defense that has looked pretty stout against the run, have been, you can get to them via the pass. Is there a world where you're starting Jeff Wilson Jr. over Todd Gurley this week?
Man, just by pure volume, I think Jeff Wilson potentially sees more touches than Todd Gurley. However, that being said, like Philadelphia is going to want to slow this game to a crawl in order to stay in it, whereas Atlanta is going up against one of the most explosive offenses in the NFL with all the weapons on the outside back. So I think the scoring potential is higher for a Todd Gurley than a Jeff Wilson this week.
Yeah, I think Gurley's the play. Like Wilson is tempting and in a good opportunity, but Philly's defense, the one thing they do well is slow down the run. They're very susceptible to the pass. Now that could all go for nothing when it's the third quarter and the Niners are up by 3 touchdowns and they're able to, get Jeff Wilson involved. And Jeff Wilson's one of those guys that you can't expect him to have a wide variety of touches, kind of throughout the game. It's usually very condensed situation, usually towards the end, usually around the goal line. And at the end of the day, he has a monster game for you. That being said, I still think Todd Gurley's the guy. Isn't
this sad that we're discussing Todd Gurley with Jeff
especially because like a lot of people, including myself, were excited about how he could potentially fit in that offense. Yeah. Taking him in round 3, round 4 seemed like a great, opportunity. But yeah, it feels like a Brian Hill game where with the Falcons throwing as much as they are, but if they get it close, they can at least keep it somewhat close. If I had to bank on one of these guys to score a touchdown, it's probably Todd Gurley, but that's pretty crazy.
I think also too. So for me, because I do like Atlanta with the points this game, especially if the receiving core is fully healthy with Julio, Calvin Ridley, and Russell Gage all out there, added to Hayden Hurst and Todd Gurley. I think because of that, I think that their offense is going to be a surprisingly really good this week. So that's one of the main reasons why I'd like Gurley over Jeff Wilson Jr.
Yeah.
It's a difficult, dilemma to be in because Jeff Wilson is the goal line guy for San Francisco in a game that they should kind of dominate. That's kind of what we're expecting from a defensive standpoint. So,
yeah, I mean, I'm looking at fantasy points against right now. Green Bay is averaging, they're allowing a 100-yard rusher and a touchdown on average. They're also, but they
played Alvin Kamara.
Yeah, well, but Alvin Kamara, glorified slot receiver, I think he had 14 targets in that game.
True.
There was a lot of Latavius Murray on the ground, which I think is interesting, especially in a Saints passing game that doesn't really have much beyond Michael Thomas. I don't understand the Emmanuel Sanders signing to this point. They don't seem to.
They just don't use him.
Yeah, Jared Cook's been in and out, but yeah, I'm curious to watch that game. It'll be fun. We'll actually have some exciting games to watch with now that the Patriots and Chiefs got moved. Niners, Eagles, Packers, Falcons, Patriots, Chiefs, Sunday night, Monday night duo. I'm hoping that we get to watch the games. I'm assuming since we have Sunday ticket, we won't have any issues getting any of the games. But we'll see. NFL always likes to have a reason to advertise their games and play them on TV if they can. So
Monday is going to be stacked full of things to watch with the American League divisional series being played. Mm-hmm. And then you have traditional Monday Night Football with Atlanta and Green Bay. And then now the Chiefs domination of the Patriots on Monday night.
And the Packers game got moved back, I think, almost an hour.
I think it got moved back to closer to what the old school Monday Night Football
Yeah,
was
8:50, I think. So 5:50. So be ready for that too. Don't, make sure you can set your lineups, and might be fun to have a little 2-game showdown slate on Monday night too, which if you've never dabbled in that, it's always nice to have that second game just to get a little more variety mixed into your DK lineups. Brian, any other line movement or betting stuff that has caught your eye throughout the week? The Bears line has been interesting. It seems the Bears line is currently sitting at 3.5, depending on where you look. That line has gone all the way down to, I think, close to pick 'em, maybe Bears +1. Now it's all the way back up to 3. That screams to me that the public's getting invested now because they tend to wait, and now they're going in on Indianapolis.
Give me the Bears with the points.
I know we're not ready to live in a world where the Bears are 4-0, but it feels like we're about to live in a world where the Bears are 4-0.
Yeah, I just, the one thing about this game, which I think is incredibly crucial, is the fact that Indianapolis doesn't have any playmakers on the outside of their offense, minus Nyheim Hines now with Paris Campbell and Michael Pittman out, because T.Y. Hilton is just not the same guy anymore. And the fact that Chicago has Khalil Mack, who will be a huge problem no matter how good the Colts offensive line is. Like, we've seen Phillip Rivers, when people are in his face, he makes some pretty shoddy decisions out there throwing the ball. So I think this game has a potential of Chicago and Indianapolis's defense, like, just completely stymieing each other's offenses. And like I said on Thursday for our betting show, I think this game is potentially the lowest scoring game of the week, with one of those like 16-13 finishes.
Yeah, a lot like their game, like the Bears game against the Giants. I am curious to see what Jonathan Taylor does. I've been watching a lot of Colts really closely the past couple weeks, and it's weird because it's like Jonathan Taylor will be the guy, but then Jordan Wilkins is getting 8 touches per game. They got Nyheim Hines re-involved last week. It really seems like Frank Reich wants to keep a rotation, which is going to frustrate things for anyone who's deploying Jonathan Taylor this week and beyond.
Yeah, I actually have Nyheim Hines in a few DFS lineups today because of that kind of stuff. Like Jonathan Taylor's workload, there's no way they'd be able to maintain him seeing like 90% of the touches out of the backfield. And the only world that we would live in where that would be real is if they're winning every game by multiple scores. And that's not going to happen today. That's not going to happen against teams like the Titans, even against Houston, because their offense is so good. Like, we're not going to see very many games like they had against Minnesota, where they were up early and by big amount of points, thus giving Jonathan Taylor pretty much all of the touches. So hold on to your Nyheim Hines shares, please.
The Niners line is moving a lot. It's up to 8.5 or 9. I'm going to be watching that game. I'm already invested at the Niners -7, but if I can get the Eagles around 10, even if I have to buy it up to like -120 to get the Eagles +10, that might be something that I might be willing to take, because I know I sound like a broken record and we've talked about it a couple times, but I feel like that week where the books win big is coming. And this could be a smash spot where if people have a rough day, everyone piles on the Niners, gets it up to 10, and then the Eagles make it with a late field goal, end up losing by 8 or losing by 6 or something, and end up costing people a lot of money.
Yeah, I just don't know who the hell Carson Wentz is going to be throwing to outside of Greg Ward and Miles Sanders. Oh, and Zach Ertz.
Yeah. Yeah, well, Dallas Goedert's out. Apparently, Richard Rodgers is a thing now. People are picking up. I mean, this is an offense. Yeah, how sad is it? Like, I feel like the Eagles keep adding pass catchers, and then they keep ending up with Dallas with Zach Ertz and a bunch of nothing. We got a question in the chat talking defenses, something we don't really talk about a ton, but I think it is a good discussion to have, because as somebody who's scrambling, I ended up using a lot of Jets this week, which ended up working out great. Thanks, Brett Rippon, for the 3 INTs, even though they allowed a few points. But we got Arizona defense versus Carolina, or the Colts. So we just talked about that Bears game. versus the Bears. If you had Colts are on the road. Arizona is home. I know Arizona's on the road.
They're at Carolina.
I don't love defenses on the road, but I feel like Arizona versus Teddy Two Gloves is probably the right way to go.
See, I'd actually lean the Colts just because I think that game has the potential of being really slow, and their D line is going to be able to keep the running game in check, and there's really no big receiving option out of the backfield for the Bears right now, and I think they'll be able to put pressure on Nick Foles, kind of, bother Allen Robinson a little bit. I like the potential for turnovers in that game, whereas in Arizona and Carolina, I think the turnover potential is more so on the Arizona side of the ball with Kyler Murray. When he's pressured right now, he looks absolutely horrible, whereas Carolina and Teddy Bridgewater, he's completing his passes at like almost an 80% clip because he's not throwing the ball down the field.
Right.
So,
and we saw on Thursday night that even though the Jets allowed 28, 30 points, something like that, getting those turnovers is crucial to scoring fantasy points. So yeah, we can go with that. Even though the Colts won't have Malik Hooker this week, I think anytime, even as much as I like what Nick Foles is doing, there's going to be opportunities.
I just like the floor is safer with the Chicago-Indianapolis game than it would be with Arizona-Carolina. At the potential, if that turns into a shootout, and your defense is allowing 30-plus points, you're hoping for a lot of sacks and a few turnovers.
We got another question in the chat. This time, quarterback. We got Drew Brees on the road at Detroit or Ryan Fitzmagic at home versus the Seattle Seahawks without Jamal Adams.
Man, that is a tough call, but I'm going to go with the freaking beard. I'm going with Fitzmagic, dude. He's like a top 10 quarterback right now.
Yeah. I think Fitzmagic's the guy. I think he's got a higher ceiling, and it's crazy to say I think he has a safer floor. But Drew Brees is concerning to me. Alvin Kamara does so much for that offense, and if he can give him 14 targets and Alvin Kamara can break a couple loose, his numbers at the end of the day end up looking great. But Brees has been questionable, has had some noodle arm moments. Not having Michael Thomas is clearly affecting him. And they do too much random stuff with Taysom Hill that it really seems to knock them out of their rhythm.
But that makes me sick watching
I'm with you. Ryan Fitzmagic is absolutely the start here, and I think Fitzmagic over I would have people. Yeah, he's probably in my top 10. Okay, let's keep it rolling. Let's talk some more stuff. Fitzmagic season. Does that mean you're still rolling with Seattle minus the? I think it's down to 5 or 5.5 now, which is.
So on one of the B sites, it's still at 6, but it's even money.
So are you pounding Seattle?
Yeah, give me the plus money with the Seahawks, baby. Like, I don't care how bad their defense is. Miami's not going to be able to stop that offense. Yeah. Seattle covered the line against the Cowboys, and I know we're talking about Miami's offense being good, but they're definitely at least a level or two below what.
Well, and it's interesting too because people look at that game and think it's closer, but then they also think about DK Metcalf was running into the end zone and got the ball punched out, and it could have actually been an even bigger win. Yeah, I don't know. I've gone back and forth. I'm probably just not going to bet that game because it scares me. Seattle's we're probably going to be sitting here at the third quarter and be like, why didn't I bet the Seahawks? But
dude, I thoroughly expect this game to be, anywhere in the range of like 24-20 at halftime, and then second half get up into that like 35-30 range.
Yeah. So maybe we look at the Dolphins in the first half. Well, Dolphins first half spread action, and then
it just moved to 5.5.
Moving lines here, Brian. Moving lines.
I love it.
Yeah, I don't. We had a question in the chat about Joe Mixon's chest injury. I haven't seen anything official.
Yeah, I haven't seen any other elaboration on what the
wonder
was.
I hopefully we're not dealing with another Tyrod situation here, but yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's one of those things that like he got hit wrong in practice and they thought it was worse than it was. Then they realize he's fine. I don't know. We'll see. We're gonna have to keep an eye. That's a situation like Joe Mixon, somebody I invested in. I expected the offense to be better, and the offense has been good, but they still can't run the ball, which is weird, which is concerning for anyone owning Joe Mixon, especially if you own him in any sort of long-term keeper or dynasty league.
Yeah, I still think that Joe Mixon is going to be like the fuel to that offense for them to kind of get going to that next level. No. And I think, like, especially next year, like, I really think he's a great buy low option for those in dynasty leagues because they're going to build that offensive line around Joe Burrow and Joe Mixon, being that they just signed Mixon to an extension. Burrow's going to be there a long time. They're going to have to get protection for him, and they're going to have to get that running game churning if they have any hopes of competing with the likes of Baltimore, Pittsburgh, and if Cleveland is able to kind of get up there. So, yeah, I still like Mixon this year. I still don't understand the lack of passing game usage for him, as we've seen it so many times. Like when he's given the ball in space, like he's a thumper, man. Like he'll run over dudes. He's pretty elusive. Like we just haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, Joe Mixon having a fantasy relevant season with an anemic offense in Cincinnati, following that up with a terrible season in a offense that looks much better is very interesting. It seems like he's kind of a guy that might need a lot of volume to be productive. And it doesn't really matter how that volume comes as long as it comes. He tends to produce with it. So, but yeah, I am keeping an eye on that game, and I am adding Gio Bernard if I have the flexibility to add him because there's something wrong, another wrong hit. Maybe Mixon's now missing a couple weeks, and an offense that we both talked about how much we like to kind of run they think they'll throw the ball here, there, and everywhere. That could be a nice complement to what that offense wants to do.
Yeah, and then I like Gio Bernard as like one of the safer handcuff plays, just knowing like how this offense operates and what his skill set brings to the offense. But staying in the AFC North real quick, I wanted to ask you, I absolutely love Lamar Jackson this week, and I think he's the QB1 today. Like, I think this is his breakout game of the 2020 season. We see a very similar Jackson to what we saw last year, where he runs for, over 100 yards. He finally finds the end zone running the ball, and he throws for like 2 touchdowns. Who is your favorite quarterback to finish as the QB1 today?
That is a good question. I mean, Lamar obviously has the goods to do it. I think, especially coming off of that game against Kansas City where nothing looked good, I think this is definitely a nice get right spot. Unfortunately, as much as I want to say, like I'm currently invested in the Vikings +4. I think Deshaun Watson breakout game could happen this week. I think this is a great spot. He's got a healthy Will Fuller, Brandon Cooks, Randall Cobb. We'll see how long they can stay actually healthy on the field. But there's a good chance that, especially as we mentioned, the Texans' offensive line has an issue blocking good pass rushers. The Vikings don't seem to have that. So I think there's a chance that we're talking about, there's the good Deshaun Watson went off for 400 yards and 4 touchdowns and reminded everyone why he's a top 3 fantasy option at quarterback.
All right, so Lamar and Deshaun, huh?
No. If we want to go dark horse, we can dive a little deeper, and I can go with my boy Nicky Mullins.
Oh, sorry.
The return of Debo, which we should talk about. Like if you have Debo Samuel and you're looking at him versus Curtis Samuel versus, let me find some interesting names, but like what are you doing with this Niners? Because this is a smash spot for Niners passing, and whether it's Kendrick Bourne or the return of George Kittle, the return of Debo, like Nick Mullins could throw for 300 yards again, 3 touchdowns, 4 touchdowns, and have the week that I'm referring to. No, I mean that's all he does is throw 300-yard games.
Yeah, I don't see it happening this week. We keep picking on Philadelphia, and it is kind of nice seeing them suck as a Cowboys fan, but eventually I think this team has to kind of play their best, and I don't think we've seen that yet from them, and it might be this week, knowing that there's absolutely nothing on the offensive side of the ball, and maybe this defense plays their best game of the year and keeps them extremely close with a chance to win late. Yeah. So, I'm not in on the Niners passing game this week.
Would you start Deebo Samuel or AJ Green?
Oh, I'm going AJ Green.
Would you start Deebo Samuel or Terry McLaurin, who is expected to play against Baltimore, but spent a lot of time on the injured list heading into the week?
Yeah, no, give me Deebo.
Deebo or CeeDee Lamb?
Oh, CeeDee Lamb, come on.
Deebo or Darius Slayton?
Man, give me Deebo because I really expect Jalen Ramsey to.
What about kind of Deebo or Marquez Valdez-Scantling, who appears to be incredibly important now that Alan Lazard is all of a sudden out like 4 to 6 weeks, which is kind of something that I don't know that a lot of us saw coming after Sunday's game, but here we are.
Those Packers wide receivers outside of Devontae Adams, they scare the living hell out of me because we've seen it before where when his number one options were gone and Aaron Rodgers, this team kind of reverted to the running back rotation, and you see a lot of the passes going to Aaron Jones or Jamal Williams. And it, like even last week, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, he only had 4 targets when there was no Devontae Adams. So now that there's no Alan Lazard either, and the possible return of Devontae Adams, even at a 80% or 85%, I still think he's gonna get the majority of the looks from A-Rod.
Oh, for sure, but I still think MVS is incredibly useful, especially now that we know Lazard will be out at least 4 to 6 weeks with a core injury. I'm not sure if it happened in practice or if it was just lingering from the week, because he obviously had a monster game last weekend, and was becoming somebody that I was incredibly interested in. Obviously, now I have to pivot on that, but I think there's opportunity opposite Devontae for somebody to be good, and MVS has shown enough. And has had the work through the first 3 weeks that make me think Aaron Rodgers trusts him enough. Anything else rolling in on Twitter that we need to make sure we hit on? Any big news dropping? My Manchester United is getting their ass handed to them by Tottenham, so that's good. 4-1. That's always what you're looking for.
I like I kind of said about that Cincinnati Jacksonville game, how I'm pretty excited to watch that. I think it'll be interesting to see how Jacksonville is able to reincorporate DJ Shark into this game against the Cincinnati pass defense, who has actually performed pretty damn good. So, and I'm kind of excited to see what James Robinson is able to do against them. Mike Daniels and what the hell's the other guy? Geno Atkins depleted defensive line for the Bengals. Like, I think we see another good game by Robinson.
And it was interesting to see last week with Chark out how much of it really infected Gardner Minshew. So Minshew and Chark and that whole passing game, I think, takes a step forward. Before we get ready to get out of here, do you have now that the lines have adjusted, do you have a game or two that you would say, my best bet for Sunday morning? Are we still heavy on, like, obviously we both love the Ravens -7 in the first half. I'm all over the Bears, especially if you get them at a field goal. Anything?
So I'd be willing to say that my favorite bet this week would be to parlay the Ravens and the Rams against the line in their games. I think Baltimore absolutely destroys Washington, and I think the Rams just get up early and create all sorts of turnovers against this Giants offense and run away with this by 20. Like, Yeah, I like both of those heavy favorites. And normally I lean on the side of the dogs in these plays, but just the gap in talent and overall like how good these teams are, I think is so big that I'm okay laying those huge spreads.
Yeah, normally I don't like going to teasers, but if you want to tease a couple games this week, I think those two with the Niners could make a lot of sense. Especially if you can get the Packers at 7 and do a 7-point tease. I don't like crossing 0. I feel like bad stuff happens when you do that. But there is some nice teaser legs. I would leave the Seattle game off of your teasers this week. That game scares me. But yeah, I think there's some interesting opportunities.
I will say I like Tampa too against the line. At only a touchdown with how good their defense has been. No Mike Williams, so really no downfield threat for the Chargers. It's going to be a lot of Austin Eckler, a lot of Keenan Allen. And if one thing that Tampa's been extremely successful at is tackling in the open field, like they're not missing tackles, which is something that Austin Eckler lives on, and Keenan Allen, his ability to find open spaces. I think the Chargers find it extremely difficult to put points on the board today too.
Yeah, we'll see. I'm a little more optimistic. I think Justin Herbert bounces back a little bit this week. And it seems like they're using Keenan Allen a little more aggressively downfield, which I think is interesting. So yeah, I'm excited. Plus, Brian, we get only 8 games in the morning slate. The rest will be in the afternoon.
Thank the Lord.
We can keep an eye on all the games and go from there. All right, Brian, this is a lot of fun. As you all know, come join us each and every Tuesday. Monday night, Tuesday is when we typically record. We'll have to see with all this COVID stuff when we're going to be actually recording stuff like the waiver wire show and previewing the weekend, and obviously with ooh, that's a good question. So
that's a no.
So yeah, Mason, I would want to know what other options you have, because currently I'm looking at I'm dealing with the same issue as I have Seattle. Fitzmagic could turn it over a couple times. Noah, start Mahomes. They're playing this week.
You start Patrick
Mahomes. They're playing this week. For those of you that are joining late, we suggest that if it's close and you really don't want to risk it, but it sounds like the Chiefs game is going to happen, and all the negative tests are a great sign. If you'd asked me yesterday, I would have been a lot more open to the idea of Fitzpatrick. Now it seems like the Chiefs-Patriots game is going to happen for sure.
Yep.
I would start Mahomes. As far as so we got Chiefs, Vikings, Cowboys, Browns.
Chiefs.
Yeah, I like the picking up the Chiefs, especially against whether it's Brian Hoyer or Jared Stidham or some combination of the two. I think that's a great opportunity.
Cowboys create no turnovers.
Yeah, I don't like the Cowboys. The Vikings are kind of interesting, but I don't know that I love them on the road.
That's a good one. Okay, so we just got a question: Tyler Boyd or OBJ? Okay, so this is a very skewed vantage point. As being a Cowboys fan, OBJ and Deshaun Jackson are on the same level of like a Randy Moss, just with the way that they're able to absolutely destroy the Cowboys every time they play us. So for that reason, I'm going OBJ.
Odell is my pick this week. He's going off. That is going to be a good matchup. Baker Mayfield's going to throw for 303 tutties versus Brian's Cowboys and make him eat his words. All right.
Man.
So Jaren's got a question. Lost Cam. He needs to pick up one of Derek Carr, Baker Mayfield, Nick Foles, Teddy Bridgewater, or Kirk Cousins.
I think Kirk Cousins has a sneaky value today.
I like
that
Kirk
Houston
Cousins.
defense.
And I like that shootout, and with the emergence of Justin Jefferson, I feel better about him. That being said, I might go Baker. I think there's an opportunity for Jarvis to have a big game, for OBJ to have a big game, and with Kareem Hunt potentially a little banged up, maybe they throw it a little bit more. But yeah, Kirk Cousins is definitely interesting.
What has Mayfield been sneaking into your cookies lately to make you want to?
I don't know. I think it's a good opportunity, and I still believe. Maybe I'll regret still believing, but here we go. Okay.
Okay, so
Two receivers in a flex from Mason. We got Odell, Jarvis, Darius Slayton, John Brown, Jeff Wilson, and Mark Ingram.
I'm going. For me, it's OBJ, Little John Brown, and I would lean. Oh man, probably Mark Ingram, depending on the scoring settings. But because I like Baltimore to roll, I think he has a decent game.
Yeah, I think you start Ingram in your flex as much as I like the idea of Jeff Wilson, and I'm going with the Browns receivers. I'm starting OBJ and Landry against the Cowboys. I think the Cowboys are going to score.
Yeah, just hating on my boys here.
No, I just see an opportunity. I'm taking over. Okay, so Russell Gage, Michael Gallup, Justin Jefferson, or DJ Moore. I think DJ Moore is the clear answer. As much as I like Russell Gage and Michael Gallup and Justin Jefferson.
Yes,
that's quite a quad of receivers. But yeah, DJ Moore in a nice spot, and clearly I think as much as I like the other guys is the best option there.
Yeah, I like DJ Moore out of that group. He's the number one target there. I know Robbie Anderson has been kind of the talk of the town there, but DJ Moore is still the number one receiver. He's the only guy that's running routes past 10 yards this year. Against the Cardinals team who minus Patrick Peterson, who isn't necessarily the same guy as he's been, as teams are kind of avoiding him. And let's not forget that Arizona is also minus their top two safeties this week, Budda Baker and I forget the other guy's freaking name, but yeah, so they're pretty depleted at the back end, and they're going to have to speed it up against this Cardinals offense who likes to run it fast. So
yep. We appreciate everybody hopping in. We appreciate everybody bringing your questions. We're here every Sunday morning from 11:30 to 12:30 Eastern. We're also here during the week. You can also follow us on Twitter. Those are our handles right there.
Yes.
As well as at FPAOP. We're always down to help you with your start sits, waiver wire questions, all that stuff. Brian, before we get out of here, one more thing. I did notice we have, in terms of totals, numbers are going up. We have 4 or 5 games in the 50s, including a 56 in your Dallas-Cleveland game, 53 in New Orleans, Detroit, 53 in Houston, Minnesota. There's a lot that if you're excited about fantasy and you're excited about points being scored, a lot of opportunities this week.
Yeah, we talked about this earlier in the week, and this could be the week where it kind of corrects itself, and all of these games with these high totals get the unders by a lot of points, not close, because everyone is kind of riding the train of all these offenses have been exploding every week. Teams are just passing the ball at ridiculous rates now, but we're going to start hitting weather. We're going to start hitting defenses who are now going to be accustomed to what offenses are trying to do against them. So yes, definitely be on the early side of the correction when it comes to the totals, which is going to start potentially this week.
One more question before we get ready to get out of here. Todd Gurley or Mark Ingram? I think it's a really, really interesting one. What say you?
I like Todd Gurley man, you know what though?
So
give me Mark Ingram.
Ingram has a much better matchup, but you also have to worry about potentially Gus Edwards and or J.K. Dobbins being involved a little more than you like. Todd Gurley is basically the only guy. Brian Hill will get involved in the passing game, but if they get in close, that he's their touchdown guy. But I think I'm with you. I think Mark Ingram's the answer. I feel much better about that matchup. Feel much better about that game being lopsided, and Mark Ingram. I could see a game where Mark Ingram runs the ball 11 times for 43 yards, scores 2 touchdowns, and rewards anybody who started him.
Now, that being said, also with the way that this Ravens team likes to operate, if they get up big early, this could be another game where it's J.K. Dobbins who has the best overall performance. Yeah. So that's the only worry with me with this Baltimore running back situation is we don't really know what the rotation is going to look like. It's game dependent. Yep. It's game script dependent. Who the hell knows? Maybe Greg Roman wakes up one day and is like, oh, you know what? Today I'm just going to use Gus Edwards and everybody else isn't going to play. Or who the hell knows? Maybe Justice Hill even sees some touches. Yeah. that situation scares me. But overall, I like Ingram's early potential success against this Washington team.
Yep. Okay. I think that will do it. We had a good hour. Once again, thank you for joining. If you're enjoying what we're doing, make sure you subscribe to our channel. We are here multiple times a week, helping you get set for each and every NFL slate. Brian, enjoy the games. Go Baker Mayfield. I'm ready to dance. And let's cash some tickets and win some fantasy matchups.
Let's go.